Crash landing. The crimson sky bled across the horizon as Roran Vance adjusted his rebreather mask and surveyed the barren landscape through his tactical visor. 6 years after the collapse, Earth's surface had become a treacherous wasteland of dust storms and radiation pockets. Most survivors huddled in underground settlements, but Roran preferred solitude. The former military medic tightened the straps on his scavenging pack, equipment clanking softly against the reinforced fabric. His weathered hands bore the calluses of survival, each scar a memory of another day conquered in this broken world. A brilliant streak of light suddenly cut across the sky, leaving a trail of blue fire in its wake. Roran tracked its descent, calculating the impact zone would be within 5 kilometers of his position. His instincts told him to ignore it. Strange phenomena were common in the wasteland and often deadly, but supplies were scarce, and salvage could mean survival for another month. Worth the risk, he muttered, adjusting his course toward the impact site. As he approached, Roran noticed the unusual pattern of debris. This wasn't a meteorite or satellite fragment. The scattered pieces formed a deliberate pattern, and at the center lay a sleek craft unlike anything he'd seen before. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen despite the impact damage, covered in swirling patterns that seemed to shift before his eyes. Roran's scanner picked up an energy signature emanating from within the craft. Drawing his pulse pistol, he cautiously approached the vessel, noting a breach in the hull large enough to squeeze through. "Hello?" he called, voice muffled by his mask. "Anyone alive in there?" A weak groan answered him. Roran slipped through the opening, his headlamp illuminating the craft's interior. The technology inside was beyond Earth's capabilities: floating displays, pulsing crystalline structures, and a pilot seat contoured to a form not quite human. In that seat lay a figure struggling to free herself from safety restraints. Her skin was a pale silver blue with luminescent markings tracing her arms and face. Her eyes, when they opened to look at him, were brilliant amethyst with no discernible pupils. "Stay back," she warned, her voice melodic despite her obvious pain. "I am armed." Roran holstered his weapon slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm a medic." The alien woman studied him warily, then winced as she shifted in her seat. "The restraints, they've malfunctioned. I cannot release them." Roran approached carefully, examining the crystalline bands securing her to the seat. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the restraints. She nodded once, still watching him intently. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt and worked at the mechanism, eventually finding a manual release. The restraints retracted, and the alien slumped forward. Roran caught her, noting the warm, slick blood soaking through her flight suit. "You're injured," he said, already assessing the wound on her side, a deep gash that leaked silvery fluid. "It is not fatal," she replied, though her voice wavered. "But we cannot linger here. They will be coming." "Who's coming?" A distant rumble answered his question before she could. Roran helped her to the shattered viewport, where they watched 3 black ships descend through the clouds, their hulls adorned with crimson symbols. "The Draken Empire," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "They must not find me." "Can you walk?" Roran asked, already calculating their escape route. "I believe so." Roran supported her weight as they exited the craft, the alien leaning heavily against him. "I'm Roran, by the way." "Roran Vance." "I am called Lyra," she replied, her eyes scanning the horizon anxiously. "Where can we go?" "This terrain offers little protection." "I have a place," Roran said. "An old research facility about 4 kilometers from here. If we can reach it, we'll be safe, at least temporarily." They began their journey across the wasteland, Lyra's condition deteriorating with each step. Above them, the black ships circled the crash site like vultures. "They are deploying ground forces," Lyra observed, her voice weaker now. "Tracking drones will not be far behind." Roran nodded grimly. Then we need to mask our trail. He steered them toward a dried riverbed, where the rocky terrain would make tracking more difficult. As they trudged through the desolate landscape, Roran's mind raced with questions. These Draken, why are they hunting you? Lyra's expression darkened. I possess information vital to ending their conquest. They have consumed countless worlds already. Your Earth is but their latest target. Earth's already been through enough, Roran muttered. The collapse, Lyra said knowingly. Your planet's technological regression. It was no accident. Roran stopped short. What do you mean? The Draken sabotaged your global system 6 years ago, a preliminary test of their capabilities before full invasion. The revelation hit Roran like a physical blow. The collapse had claimed billions of lives, including his family. To learn it was deliberate. A high-pitched whine interrupted his thoughts. A metallic sphere whizzed overhead, scanning the terrain with crimson beams. Tracker drone, Lyra whispered. Roran pulled her into the shadow of a rock formation just as the drone passed over their position. They held their breath until the machine continued its search pattern away from them. We need to move, Roran said, checking Lyra's wound. The silvery blood had congealed, but her skin had taken on a dull, ashen quality. You need medical attention. There is medical equipment in my craft, Lyra said. A silver case with... Too late for that now, Roran interrupted, noticing armed figures converging on the crash site in the distance. We'll have to make do with what I have. They continued their journey, each step more difficult than the last. Lyra's breathing grew labored, and Roran found himself supporting more of her weight. Finally, the outline of a dilapidated building appeared on the horizon, the abandoned research facility. Almost there, Roran encouraged, adjusting Lyra's arm around his shoulder. The facility had once been a government research station, its purpose classified even before the collapse. Now, it served as one of Roran's many safe houses scattered across the wasteland. Its reinforced walls and underground levels would provide temporary shelter. As they approached the main entrance, a rumble shook the ground. Roran looked back to see one of the black ships changing course, heading directly toward their position. They found us, Lyra gasped. Roran keyed in the access code on a hidden panel, and the reinforced door slid open with a groan of protest. He hurried Lyra inside, sealing the door behind them just as the ship loomed overhead. The facility's emergency lights flickered to life, casting eerie shadows across dusty equipment and abandoned workstations. Roran guided Lyra to a makeshift medical area he had set up during previous visits. Lie down, he instructed, helping her onto a cot. I need to look at that wound properly. Lyra complied, her amethyst eyes never leaving his face. Your kindness is unexpected. Most species would not risk themselves for an unknown alien. Roran prepared his medical supplies with practiced efficiency. I was a combat medic before the collapse. Old habits die hard. He hesitated. Besides, if what you're saying is true, that these Draken caused the collapse, then we're on the same side. He carefully removed the torn section of her flight suit to reveal the wound. Up close, it was unlike any injury he had treated before. The edges pulsed with a faint light, and the silvery blood seemed to contain microscopic crystals. Our physiologies are different, Lyra warned as Roran examined the wound. Your medicines may not work on me. I'll start with cleaning and binding, Roran said. Universal principles of wound care should still apply. As he worked, a deafening sound filled the air, the Draken ship hovering directly above the facility. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling as the structure trembled. They're scanning for life signs, Lyra explained, wincing as Roran cleaned her wound. This building, what was its purpose? Advanced materials research, I think, Roran replied, applying a bandage. The lower levels are lined with lead and other shielding materials. Should mask our presence, at least temporarily. Lyra nodded weakly. That may buy us time. She reached for Roran's hand, her cool fingers wrapping around his wrist. There is something I must tell you. If I do not survive. You're going to survive, Roran interrupted firmly. Listen, she insisted. I am not merely a fugitive. I am Lyra Navareth, Crown Princess of the Celestial Alliance. My capture would mean surrender terms for my people, and doom for countless worlds, including Earth. Roran stared at her, processing the revelation. Your royalty? A faint smile touched Lyra's lips. And you had no idea you were rescuing an heiress to an interstellar throne. The facility shuddered again as the Draken ship intensified its scan. Roran finished bandaging Lyra's wound, his mind reeling with implications. He had stumbled into something far larger than he could have imagined, a conflict spanning the stars, with Earth caught in the crossfire. Rest, he told the princess, checking his weapons. I need to secure our perimeter. As he moved through the facility, sealing vents and reinforcing entry points, Roran couldn't shake the feeling that his life had irrevocably changed. The wasteland survivor now found himself guardian to an alien princess, with enemies descending from the stars. Outside, the Draken ship continued its ominous vigil, casting a shadow over the facility like a predator poised to strike. Hidden Sanctuary. The rhythmic drip of water echoed through the abandoned research facility as Roran finished fortifying the entrance. The Draken ship had departed after an hour of scanning, but Roran knew better than to assume they'd given up. They were regrouping, planning their next move. He returned to the medical area where Princess Lyra rested, her silver-blue skin now regaining some of its luminescence. Her amethyst eyes opened as he approached. The bandage appears to be working, she observed, sitting up carefully. Our physiologies may differ, but your skills as a healer are impressive. Roran checked her wound. The silvery blood had stopped flowing, and the edges showed signs of regeneration much faster than a human's would heal. You recover quickly. An evolutionary advantage of my species, Lyra explained. Though not quick enough to evade the Draken without assistance. The facility's security monitors flickered to life, showing thermal readings of the surrounding area. 6 heat signatures moved methodically toward the building, humanoid but with abnormal temperature patterns. Draken ground troops, Lyra said, her voice tense. Elite hunters. Roran checked his weapons and handed Lyra a pulse pistol. Can you shoot? She took the weapon with practiced ease. I was trained in combat from childhood. Royal privilege comes with royal responsibilities. Why are you so important to them? Roran asked, securing the doors to their section of the facility. Besides being royalty. Lyra's expression darkened. I carry classified intelligence about the Draken's primary weakness, information that could end their conquest. My ship was attacked en route to our military headquarters. Outside, the Draken soldiers deployed scanning equipment, their armor gleaming under Earth's fading sun. This facility has underground levels, Roran said, gathering essential supplies. We can access them through the maintenance shaft. The deeper we go, the more shielding protects us. They descended through narrow passages, the air growing colder with each level. Roran activated emergency lighting that cast a soft blue glow over abandoned laboratories filled with dust-covered equipment. What was researched here? Lyra asked, examining strange devices with curious eyes. Advanced materials, quantum communication, theoretical physics, Roran replied. After the collapse, places like this were abandoned or looted. I've collected some functioning tech over the years. They reached a sealed chamber at the lowest level. Roran input a security code, and heavy doors slid open to reveal his true sanctuary, a living space equipped with salvaged technology, medical supplies, and survival gear. You've prepared well, Lyra observed. Survival became my specialty, Roran said simply. After losing everything in the collapse, I learned to plan for every contingency. Lyra's eyes softened. You lost family? Roran nodded, the memories still painful. My wife Nadia. Our daughter Elise. When the power grids failed and the automated systems turned against us. He trailed off, unable to continue. I am sorry, Lyra said gently. The Draken's tactics are deliberately cruel. They weaken worlds through systematic disruption before invasion. Roran's expression hardened. And now they're here to finish what they started. Not if we can prevent it, Lyra countered. The information I carry could turn the tide of this war. Above them, the security system registered impacts as the Draken soldiers breached the facility's upper levels. Roran activated additional countermeasures, false heat signatures to confuse their scanners and automated defense systems to slow their advance. We have time, but not much, he said, setting up monitoring equipment. Tell me about this information you're carrying. Lyra removed a crystalline device from a hidden compartment in her suit. It pulsed with inner light as she activated it, projecting a holographic display of complex data. The Draken Empire draws power from quantum singularities, artificial black holes contained within their command ships, she explained. We've discovered a resonance frequency that can destabilize these power sources. Roran studied the projection. You're saying we can shut down their entire fleet? Precisely. But the implementation requires access to a powerful transmission array. I was heading to our forward base when I was attacked and forced to make an emergency landing. The facility shuddered as explosions rocked the upper levels. The Draken were getting closer. Is there such an array on Earth? Roran asked. Lyra's expression brightened. According to our intelligence, yes. Before the collapse, your planet had developed quantum communication technology. While primitive compared to ours, it could be modified. The Nexus, Roran whispered, realization dawning. That's what this facility was researching. There were rumors of a massive array built in the northern mountains. Can you locate it? Lyra asked urgently. Roran moved to a storage compartment, retrieving old data tablets. I've collected information for years, trying to understand what happened during the collapse. If there's any record of the Nexus, it would be here. As Roran searched through the data, Lyra monitored the Draken's progress. They had reached the third level and were methodically checking each room. Their commander is with them, she noted, studying a figure whose armor bore distinctive markings. Vexus, one of their most ruthless hunters. He's tracked me across 3 star systems. Roran found what he was looking for, classified schematics of a massive array hidden within Mount Redoubt, 200 kilometers north. Here it is. The Quantum Nexus. It was designed for instantaneous global communication, but the project was abandoned after the collapse. Is it intact? Lyra asked. Unknown, but it's our best hope, Roran replied, downloading the coordinates to his portable navigator. We'll need transport. I have a terrain vehicle hidden 5 kilometers from here. Another explosion rattled the facility, closer this time. The Draken had reached the 4th level. We need to move, Roran urged, gathering essential supplies. There's an emergency exit tunnel that leads to the surface, away from the main entrance. As they prepared to leave, Lyra placed a hand on Roran's arm. There's something else you should know. Her voice was hesitant. My people have been observing Earth for centuries. We believe certain humans carry genetic markers that respond to our technology. Roran paused. What kind of markers? We call them the resonant. Humans with the ability to interface with advanced quantum systems. She studied him intently. When you helped me from my ship, the navigation controls responded to your touch. That should not be possible for ordinary humans. Roran remembered the strange sensation when he'd touched the crystalline panels, a subtle vibration that had seemed to connect with something deep within him. Are you saying I'm not entirely human? Your ancestors may have had contact with my people long ago, Lyra explained. The genetic legacy remains dormant in some bloodlines, activated only by proximity to our technology. Before Roran could process this revelation, the security system blared a warning. The Draken had discovered their location and were converging on the lower level. We have minutes, not hours, Roran said grimly. Let's go. They hurried through the emergency tunnel, a narrow passage that sloped upward toward the surface. Behind them, the sound of weapons fire echoed as the Draken breached the final defenses. The tunnel emerged in a ravine half a kilometer from the facility. As they reached the surface, night had fallen, providing cover for their escape. Roran oriented himself using the stars, then pointed toward a ridge of weathered boulders. The vehicle is hidden beyond those rocks. If we can reach it, we have a chance. They moved as quickly as Lyra's condition allowed, staying low and using the terrain for cover. The night air was frigid, their breath forming clouds in the moonlight. Your world is beautiful, despite its scars, Lyra commented softly as they paused for her to rest. The Celestial Alliance would welcome Earth as an ally, help you rebuild what was lost. If we survive long enough to make that happen, Roran replied, checking their back trail for pursuers. A piercing light suddenly illuminated the ravine as a Draken ship appeared overhead, its search beams sweeping the terrain. Roran pulled Lyra into the shadow of an overhanging rock as the light passed over their position. They're using atmospheric disturbance sensors, Lyra whispered. They can detect our body heat. Roran thought quickly, then removed a thermal disruptor from his pack, a device he'd salvaged from military wreckage. This can mask our signatures for about 20 minutes. Should be enough to reach the vehicle. He activated the disruptor, and a field of energy enveloped them, bending heat patterns around their bodies. They continued their journey, moving faster now as the Draken ship circled above, its sensors confused by the disruptor's effect. They reached the ridge of boulders, and Roran revealed a camouflage tarp covering a rugged terrain vehicle. Unlike most pre-collapse vehicles, this one had been modified to run on alternative power sources, a combination of solar cells and hydrogen conversion. It's not fast, but it's reliable, Roran said, helping Lyra into the passenger seat. And it doesn't emit the same signatures as combustion engines. As they prepared to depart, a figure appeared atop the ridge, a Draken soldier in ornate armor, his helmet retracting to reveal reptilian features and gleaming yellow eyes. Princess Lyra, he called, his voice carrying a metallic resonance. Your pursuit ends here. Commander Vexus, Lyra replied, her voice steady despite her fear. Still doing the Emperor's dirty work, I see. Vexus descended the ridge with inhuman grace, energy weapons materializing from his gauntlets. The Emperor rewards loyalty. Your capture will earn me a governorship, perhaps of this very world once we've subjugated it. Roran raised his pulse rifle. You'll have to go through me first. The Draken commander laughed, a sound like grinding metal. A primitive human protecting an interstellar princess. How quaint. This primitive just evaded your elite forces for hours, Roran countered. Don't underestimate what humans can do when pushed. Vexus lunged forward with startling speed, but Roran had anticipated the move. He fired his rifle, not at the commander but at the ridge above him. The pulse blast dislodged a shower of boulders that forced Vexus to dive for cover. Roran seized the momentary advantage, leaping into the driver's seat and activating the vehicle. It roared to life, wheels spinning in the loose soil before finding traction. Hold on, he shouted to Lyra as they accelerated away from the ridge. Behind them, Vexus emerged from the rubble, his yellow eyes glowing with rage. He raised his gauntlet, an energy weapon charging with ominous light. Incoming! Lyra warned. Roran swerved as a beam of energy scorched the ground where they had been seconds before. The vehicle bounced over the rough terrain, putting distance between them and the Draken commander. He'll call reinforcements, Lyra said, clutching the crystalline device containing the crucial data. We have perhaps an hour before they regroup. Roran nodded grimly, setting course for the northern mountains where the quantum nexus awaited. The path ahead would be treacherous, not just from the hostile terrain but from the hunters who would stop at nothing to capture the princess. As they raced through the wasteland, the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, a new day in a world that suddenly seemed much larger than Roran had ever imagined. The ancient nexus. Dawn painted the wasteland in hues of amber and gold as Roran's vehicle traversed the difficult terrain toward Mount Redoubt. With each kilometer, the landscape grew more treacherous, radiation pockets glowed in valleys, and the effects of the collapse became more evident in twisted metal structures that had once been civilization. The Draken have deployed aerial trackers, Lyra noted, monitoring a small device from her flight suit. 3 pursuit vessels, converging on our position from different vectors. Roran guided the vehicle into a narrow canyon, using the rock formations for cover. We can't outrun them, but we can outmaneuver them. Their ships aren't designed for Earth's atmospheric conditions. They continued north, the jagged peaks of Mount Redoubt growing larger on the horizon. According to Roran's data, the quantum nexus was built deep within the mountain, a massive array designed to revolutionize global communications before the collapse rendered it obsolete. My wound is healing, Lyra said, examining the bandage. Your medical skills have served me well. Military training, Roran replied, navigating a particularly steep incline. Though treating alien royalty wasn't covered in basic field medicine. A ghost of a smile touched Lyra's lips. There's much about me you don't yet know, Roran Vance. Like how you speak perfect English. Universal translators are standard for diplomats, she explained. Though I've studied your languages directly. Earth has been of special interest to my people. Before Roran could ask why, a warning alarm sounded from the dashboard. A Draken ship had detected them, approaching rapidly from the east. They've locked onto our heat signature, Lyra warned. Roran veered sharply into a collapsed tunnel, once part of an ancient highway system. The vehicle's headlights illuminated a passageway choked with debris and abandoned vehicles from the collapse. This tunnel runs for 15 kilometers. If we can reach the other side, we'll be within range of the mountain base. They navigated the tunnel's obstacles, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them. Halfway through, they encountered a massive collapse that blocked the path. End of the road, Roran muttered, assessing their options. Lyra pointed to a maintenance access door barely visible in the tunnel wall. There. They abandoned the vehicle, gathering essential supplies before proceeding on foot through the maintenance corridor. The narrow passage was damp and cold, water dripping from overhead pipes. The resonant gene, Roran said as they walked. You mentioned it was dormant in certain bloodlines. How do you know I carry it? The reaction of my ship's systems to your touch was unmistakable, Lyra replied. Only those with the gene can interface with our quantum-based technology without training. What does that mean for me? It means you may be more important to this conflict than either of us realized, Lyra said carefully. The nexus we seek, if it operates on similar principles to our technology, you might be able to activate it where others could not. The maintenance corridor eventually opened onto a service area beneath an abandoned military outpost. Roran consulted his navigator. We're 3 kilometers from the mountain base. On foot, through open terrain. Above them, the distinct hum of Draken ships could be heard. They would need to move quickly and stay hidden. They emerged into the wasteland once more, using rubble and dead vegetation for cover as they approached Mount Redoubt. The mountain's face was scarred by massive doors built into the rock, a facility in trance large enough to accommodate vehicles and equipment. Sealed, Roran observed as they drew closer. And the power's long dead. Lyra examined the control panel. These systems may be primitive, but the principles are universal. She removed a small device from her suit and attached it to the panel. This can provide enough energy for a temporary activation. The panel flickered to life, its display showing security protocols that had been dormant for years. Roran input access codes he had salvaged from the research facility's data. With a grinding protest of neglected mechanisms, the massive doors began to part, revealing a cavernous interior shrouded in darkness. "We should hurry," Lyra urged, glancing skyward. "Vexus will have calculated our destination by now." They slipped inside, and Roran activated auxiliary power. Emergency lights flickered on, revealing a vast complex of laboratories, storage areas, and machinery. The air was stale but breathable. "According to the schematics, the Nexus is located at the mountain's core," Roran said, consulting his navigator. "Through the main research wing and down to sublevel 5. They moved deeper into the facility, passing abandoned workstations and equipment. Evidence of a hasty evacuation was everywhere, personal items left behind, research notes scattered across floors. "Your people fled quickly," Lyra observed. "When the collapse hit, it was chaos," Roran replied. "Power grids failed, automated systems turned against us, communication networks went dark. Those who survived did so by adapting, or by luck. They reached a security checkpoint that required biometric authentication." Roran placed his hand on the scanner, not expecting it to work after years of neglect. To his surprise, the panel illuminated green, and the security doors slid open. "How?" he began. "The resonant gene," Lyra explained. "Even your own technology recognizes something different about you." Beyond the checkpoint lay a vertical shaft with a maintenance elevator. The power cables had been severed, making it inoperable. Maintenance ladders, Roran pointed to metal rungs embedded in the shaft wall. "We climb." The descent was arduous, the ladder rungs slick with condensation. 5 levels down, they reached the heart of the facility, a massive chamber housing a structure that defied conventional engineering. The quantum nexus resembled a crystalline tree, its branches extending toward the ceiling, each terminating in what appeared to be transmission nodes. The base connected to enormous power conduits that disappeared into the mountain rock. "Remarkable," Lyra breathed, approaching the structure. "Your scientists were closer to our technology than I realized. This design, it's similar to our quantum communion spires." Roran examined the control station. "Can it be adapted for your purposes?" With modifications, Lyra confirmed, connecting her crystalline device to the system. The resonance frequency must be precisely calibrated to affect the Draken power sources. As they worked, a distant explosion echoed through the facility. The Draken had arrived. "How much time do you need?" Roran asked, checking his weapons. "The calibration process requires at least 20 minutes, Lyra replied, her fingers moving rapidly over the controls. "But once initiated, I cannot stop it without risking damage to the data." Roran nodded grimly. "Then I'll buy you time." He moved to the chamber entrance, setting up defensive positions with what equipment he could find. The sounds of combat grew closer, energy weapons discharging, metal tearing, the distinctive hiss of Draken command language. Roran prepared his pulse rifle, knowing he faced overwhelming odds. The first Draken soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor, their armor gleaming under the emergency lights. Roran took aim and fired, striking the lead soldier in the joint between armor plates. The Draken fell, but others advanced, using their fallen comrade for cover. Roran ducked behind a console as return fire scorched the wall behind him. He had faced desperate situations before, but never against an enemy with such advanced weaponry. "Status," he called to Lyra. 14 minutes remaining, she replied, not looking up from her work. "The system is accepting the modifications, but the power source is unstable." Roran threw a concussive charge down the corridor, buying seconds of confusion before resuming fire. He picked his targets carefully, aiming for weaknesses in the Draken armor, joint seams, vision ports, weapon connectors. 3 more soldiers fell before a new figure appeared, Commander Vexus, his ornate armor unmarked by Roran's earlier attacks. The Draken leader surveyed the scene with cold calculation. "Impressive, human," he called. "Few of your kind have killed my warriors." "I'm just getting started," Roran replied, though he knew his ammunition was running low. Vexus made a gesture, and his remaining soldiers ceased fire. "You fight with unusual skill. Perhaps there is truth to the rumors about certain Earth bloodlines." Roran maintained his position, weapon trained on the commander. "What rumors would those be?" "That the Celestial Alliance seeded your world with their genetics millennia ago," Vexus said, advancing slowly. "Creating bloodlines that could be useful to them in the future." Behind him, Roran could hear Lyra working furiously at the Nexus controls. 10 minutes remained. "If you surrender the princess now," Vexus continued, "I might consider sparing your miserable planet from complete annihilation. We need only subjugate, not destroy." "Generous offer," Roran replied sarcastically. "But I'll pass." Vexus moved with sudden, blinding speed, closing the distance to Roran before he could react. A gauntlet hand seized Roran's weapon, crushing it like paper. "Your defiance is futile," the commander hissed, lifting Roran by the throat. "The Draken Empire has conquered worlds far more advanced than this wasteland." Roran struggled for breath, his vision darkening. With his remaining strength, he withdrew a thermal charge from his belt and pressed it against Vexus's armor. The explosion separated them, sending both combatants in opposite directions. Roran crashed into a control panel, pain lancing through his body. Vexus stumbled but remained standing, a section of his armor blackened and smoking. "Impressive indeed," the commander said, yellow eyes narrowing. "But ultimately pointless." He advanced again, but a sudden tremor shook the chamber. The Nexus had begun to activate, its crystalline branches glowing with increasing intensity. 7 minutes to full calibration, Lyra called, her voice tense. Vexus turned toward her, understanding dawning in his reptilian features. "The resonance frequency. You intend to transmit it to your fleet." His expression contorted with rage. "I will not allow it." The Draken commander charged toward Lyra, energy weapons forming from his gauntlets. Roran intercepted him, using a broken conduit as a makeshift staff. The metal sparked against Vexus's armor, temporarily disrupting his energy weapons. "You cannot stop what's coming," Roran growled, pressing his attack. Vexus caught the conduit, wrenching it from Roran's grasp. "Your species has always overestimated its importance in the cosmic order." Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger this time. The Nexus's glow intensified, bathing the combatants in pulsing light. "The mountain's power systems are reaching critical levels," Lyra warned. 3 minutes to transmission. Vexus struck Roran with devastating force, sending him crashing into the Nexus control station. Pain exploded through his body, ribs cracking under the impact. As his hand touched the control interface, something unexpected happened. The panel responded, illuminating with patterns similar to those on Lyra's ship. Roran felt a strange resonance within him, as if something dormant was awakening. Vexus approached Lyra, weapon raised for a killing blow. "Your schemes end here, princess." Roran placed both hands on the interface, surrendering to the strange sensation flowing through him. The Nexus responded immediately, its crystalline branches pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. "System override accepted," an automated voice announced. Quantum harmonization accelerated. Vexus turned in alarm. "What have you done?" The Nexus erupted with blinding light, energy coursing through its structure with increased intensity. Lyra looked at Roran in astonishment. "You've activated the harmonic convergence," she said. "The transmission will reach twice the distance we anticipated." Vexus lunged toward the control station, but it was too late. The Nexus reached full power, a pulse of energy erupting from its core and traveling up through the branches. The mountain itself trembled as the quantum signal burst forth, aimed at the stars. "Transmission complete," Lyra announced triumphantly. Vexus roared in fury, raising his weapon toward Roran. "You will pay for this interference." Before he could fire, a new tremor shook the chamber, not from the Nexus, but from outside. The facility's sensors displayed multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere, ships of a design different from the Draken vessels. "The Celestial Alliance fleet," Lyra said, hope filling her voice. "They've received our transmission." Vexus backed away, activating a communication device on his gauntlet. "All forces, return to command ships. Prepare for space engagement." He fixed Roran with a hateful glare. "This isn't over, human. Your world will burn for this defiance." The Draken commander activated a teleportation device, disappearing in a flash of energy. Throughout the facility, alarms indicated the retreating Draken forces. Roran collapsed against the control station, his injuries finally catching up with him. Lyra rushed to his side, concern etched on her features. "You've done it," she said softly. "The resonance frequency has been transmitted. The Draken power sources will begin destabilizing within hours." "Your people," Roran managed, his voice strained with pain. "They're really here?" Lyra nodded, helping him to a sitting position. "The fleet must have been closer than we thought. When they detected the transmission, they responded immediately." Outside, the sounds of battle had ceased, replaced by the distinctive hum of Alliance vessels landing near the facility. "What happens now?" Roran asked, wincing as he tried to stand. Lyra's expression grew solemn. "Now, Roran Vance, you learn the truth about your heritage, and why Earth has always been precious to my people." Royal Revelation. The Celestial Alliance ship hovered above Mount Redoubt, its silver hull gleaming in the afternoon sun. Inside the facility, medical teams treated Roran's injuries while Lyra coordinated with her people. The princess moved with renewed confidence, her royal bearing evident now that she was among her own kind. "Your 3 broken ribs have been stabilized," said the alien medic attending to Roran. "Our regenerative field will accelerate healing, but you must rest." Roran sat up despite the pain, watching as Alliance soldiers secured the Nexus chamber. "I'll rest when the Draken are gone from Earth's orbit." Lyra approached, now dressed in formal attire that marked her status, flowing garments of luminescent material that shifted colors with her movements. A circlet of crystalline material adorned her head. "The fleet has engaged the Draken ships," she reported. "The resonance frequency is working, 3 of their command vessels have already lost power." "And Vexus?" Roran asked. "His ship retreated to the outer system, but they won't escape the effect. This battle is already won." She gestured for the medics to leave them. "Walk with me, if you're able." They moved through the facility toward an observation platform that offered a view of the mountain range. Alliance ships patrolled the skies, their sleek designs a stark contrast to the brutal architecture of the Draken vessels. "You promised me answers," Roran said, wincing as they walked. "About my heritage." Lyra nodded, her expression solemn. "Thousands of years ago, the Celestial Alliance established outposts on Earth, what your ancient civilizations called gods or visitors from the stars. We shared knowledge, culture, and in some cases, our genetics." "You're saying some humans are part alien?" "The resonant gene began as a way to allow humans to operate our technology," Lyra explained. "Over generations, it became diluted but remained dormant in certain bloodlines, activated only by proximity to our quantum systems." They reached the observation platform where a holographic display showed Earth from orbit, the continents scarred by the collapse, but still recognizable. "Your genetic profile is unique," Lyra continued. According to our scans, you possess one of the strongest resonance signatures we've ever detected in a human. Your connection to the Nexus proved that. Roran stared at the holographic Earth, processing the implications. Is that why you crashed near me? Was it coincidence? Lyra hesitated. Not entirely. The resonant gene emits a quantum signature our ships can detect. My emergency systems directed me toward the strongest nearby signature, you. So I was your contingency plan, Roran concluded. And you exceeded all expectations, Lyra said warmly. Few of our own people could have accomplished what you did against Vexus. A tall, distinguished alien approached, his skin a deeper blue than Lyra's, his eyes silver rather than amethyst. He wore ceremonial armor and carried himself with unmistakable authority. This is Commander the Lion, Lyra introduced. My father's most trusted general. The Lion bowed slightly to Roran. You have done our people a great service, Roran Vance. Princess Lyra has informed us of your bravery. I did what anyone would do, Roran replied. That is where you are wrong, the Lion said. What you accomplished, facing Draken elite forces with primitive weapons, activating the Nexus without training, these acts required exceptional qualities. The general activated a small device, projecting a new hologram, a DNA strand with certain sequences highlighted. Your bloodline contains markers from one of our most revered houses, he explained. The House of Alarith, known for producing our greatest warriors and scientists. Roran studied the hologram. How is that possible? An expedition to Earth 3,000 years ago, Lyra answered. Led by my ancestor, Queen Ilaria. She established diplomatic relations with several human civilizations and left behind technological outposts, including the one beneath this mountain. The Nexus, Roran realized. It wasn't built by humans at all. Its core technology was adapted from our designs, the Lion confirmed. Your government merely rediscovered what had been hidden for millennia. A communication officer interrupted, bringing news from the battle in orbit. The Draken fleet was in full retreat, their power systems failing under the resonance attack. Victory is ours, the Lion announced. Earth is safe, for now. For now? Roran questioned. Lyra's expression grew serious. The Draken Empire spans dozens of star systems. This defeat will slow them, but they will return with new tactics, new technology resistant to the resonance frequency. Which is why we need your help, the Lion added. Your connection to both worlds makes you uniquely valuable. Before Roran could respond, alarms sounded throughout the facility. Security screens showed a lone Draken ship approaching at high speed, smaller than the others, designed for atmospheric combat. Vexus, Lyra whispered, recognizing the ship's configuration. The vessel launched missiles at the mountain, the impacts shaking the entire structure. Alliance defensive systems engaged, but several projectiles penetrated their shields. He's targeting the Nexus, the Lion realized. Evacuate the lower levels. Roran and Lyra rushed back toward the Nexus chamber as Alliance soldiers coordinated the evacuation. They reached the chamber just as a section of the ceiling collapsed, debris crushing equipment and blocking pathways. The calibration is destabilizing, Lyra observed, checking the control systems. If the Nexus overloads, the quantum backlash could destroy half the continent. Can you shut it down? Roran asked. Not remotely. The emergency protocols require direct interface. Another impact rocked the facility. The path to the Nexus core was now blocked by fallen debris and energy discharges from damaged conduits. I can reach it, Roran said, eyeing a narrow gap in the rubble. Your injuries, Lyra began. Won't matter if the Nexus destroys everything. He met her gaze. The resonant gene. If I can activate it, I can shut it down, right? Lyra nodded reluctantly. In theory, yes. But the power surges could kill you. It's a risk I'll take. Roran removed the medical device stabilizing his ribs. What do I need to do? Place both hands on the core interface, Lyra instructed. Focus on creating harmony between your consciousness and the system, like we did during the transmission, but in reverse. Roran squeezed through the gap in the debris, ignoring the pain that shot through his body. The Nexus core pulsed with unstable energy, arcs of quantum particles dancing between the crystalline branches. Above, Vexus's ship continued its assault, each impact increasing the Nexus's instability. Roran reached the core interface, a crystalline panel now cracked and leaking energy. He placed his hands on the interface, feeling the immediate connection as the resonant gene activated. His consciousness expanded, connecting with the Nexus's systems in ways he couldn't comprehend but instinctively understood. The quantum pathways appeared in his mind like rivers of light, each flowing in chaotic patterns. Roran focused on calming the flow, redirecting the energy back toward stability. Outside his awareness, Lyra watched as Roran's body began to glow with the same light as the Nexus, the resonant gene fully activated for the first time. The crystalline branches responded, their chaotic pulsing gradually synchronizing with his heartbeat. System stabilization in progress, announced the automated voice. Quantum resonance harmonizing. Another explosion shook the chamber as Vexus's ship made a direct hit on the mountain peak. Debris rained down, but an energy field had formed around Roran and the Nexus core, protecting them from physical damage. The gene is protecting him, the lion observed, having joined Lyra at the chamber entrance. Just as the ancient texts described. The Nexus's energy levels began to decrease, the dangerous overload averted. As stability returned, Roran's connection with the system deepened, revealing information embedded in its quantum matrix, historical records, star charts, and personal logs from the original Alliance expedition. He saw glimpses of Queen Ilaria and her interactions with ancient Earth civilizations. He saw the creation of the resonant bloodlines and their purpose, to serve as guardians for the technology left behind. And he saw something else, a genetic map showing his direct lineage to the royal house of the Celestial Alliance. The Nexus completed its shutdown sequence, the crystalline branches going dark as power systems returned to dormancy. The protective field around Roran dissipated, and he collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by what he had experienced. Lyra rushed to his side. "Roran. Are you all right?" He looked up at her, seeing her in a new light. "You knew, didn't you? About my connection to your royal house?" Lyra helped him to his feet. "I suspected, but wasn't certain until you interfaced with the Nexus." Outside, Alliance ships had neutralized Vexus's vessel. The immediate danger had passed, but the revelation of Roran's heritage left him reeling. "What does this mean for me? For Earth?" Commander the Lion approached, his expression solemn. "It means you have a choice, Roran Vance. You can remain on Earth, helping your people rebuild with our assistance. Or you can join the Celestial Alliance, claim your rightful place among our houses, and help us defend not just Earth, but all worlds threatened by the Draken." Roran looked at the damaged facility around them, a symbol of humanity's resilience and potential. Then he looked at Lyra, whose arrival had changed everything. "Earth is my home," he said finally. "But after what I've seen, I can't turn my back on the bigger fight." Lyra smiled, relief evident in her expression. "There is much you can learn from us, and much we can learn from you. The alliance between our peoples will be stronger with you as its bridge." As they emerged from the mountain facility, Alliance ships descended from orbit, bringing supplies, technology, and representatives to formally establish contact with Earth's surviving governments. The Draken had been driven back, but the war was far from over. Earth would now take its place in a conflict spanning the stars, with Roran, once a simple wasteland survivor, standing as the unexpected link between two worlds. Commander the Lion approached with a formal communication device. "Princess Lyra's father, King Thelos, wishes to speak with you directly." Roran accepted the device, still adjusting to his new reality. The holographic image of the Celestial Alliance king appeared, his resemblance to Lyra unmistakable. Roran Vance, the king addressed him. My daughter speaks highly of your courage. The blood of our ancestors flows in your veins, making you kin to our royal house. I'm honored, your majesty, Roran replied, uncertain of proper protocol. But I'm just a survivor who did what was necessary. Sometimes the greatest destinies begin with simple necessity, King Thalos replied. The Draken will return, stronger and more determined. When they do, both our peoples must stand united. The king's image flickered as he turned his attention to Lyra. Daughter, you have completed your mission admirably. The resonance frequency has crippled the Draken fleet across 3 sectors. Lyra bowed her head. Thank you, father. But the credit belongs equally to Roran. King Thalos studied Roran with interest. Then perhaps it is fitting that you two continue to work together. I am appointing you, Princess Lyra, as our official ambassador to Earth, with Roran Vance as your liaison. Roran and Lyra exchanged glances, both surprised by the appointment. Together, the king continued, you will oversee the integration of Alliance technology to help Earth rebuild, while preparing its people for their role in the greater conflict. After the communication ended, Roran and Lyra stood on the mountain overlook, watching Alliance ships distribute aid to nearby settlements. News of the alien arrival was spreading rapidly, bringing hope to a world that had known only hardship for 6 years. Your people will have questions, Lyra said. Fear, doubt, excitement, all natural responses to first contact. They're resilient, Roran replied. They survived the collapse. They'll adapt to this too. Lyra turned to face him, her expression earnest. There's something else you should know about the resonant gene. Its activation is only the beginning. With training, you could develop abilities beyond what you've already demonstrated. Like what? Enhanced healing, quantum perception, energy manipulation, capabilities once common among the Starborn houses. Roran considered this as he watched the sun setting over the wasteland, a landscape that suddenly held promise rather than desolation. When I was a medic, he said quietly, I took an oath to preserve life and alleviate suffering. If these abilities can help me do that on a larger scale, then I'm willing to learn. Lyra smiled, placing her hand over his. Then let this be the beginning of a new chapter, not just for you or for me, but for both our peoples. As night fell over Mount Redoubt, lights from Alliance ships illuminated the sky like new constellations, symbols of a future where Earth would rise from its ashes to take its place among the stars. And at the center of this transformation stood Roran Vance, once a lone survivor, now the bridge between 2 worlds and heir to an ancient cosmic legacy.